Welcome back to Culture Yapfest, the unserious podcast for serious fans. I am Skullie, a fandom girly who loves to chat her shit.
And I'm Earth, a cosplayer who spends too much time in the library. And let's get yapping.
Let's get yapping. So today we're talking about cozy games, which is a super amazing specialty of yours.
For those of you who are just joining or might be new with this episode, I'm a grad student in media, culture, and communication. And my specialty is digital culture, specifically online culture and games. And for my master's thesis, I'm looking at cozy gaming communities, doing sort of a digital ethnographic project to get a sense of how players construct the definition of cozy games and how cozy gaming might have sort of a more important political and cultural value than we think about it on the surface. So cozy games I'm obviously a big cozy gaming fan myself. I've played a lot of cozy games. That was sort of how I arrived on this as a topic for my master's thesis. Most people, like when you pick a thesis topic or a dissertation topic, you pick something that haunts you, that like for whatever reason it bothers you and you can't stop thinking about it. And my big beef, the thing that haunts me, is that I feel like within the canon of game studies scholarship, cozy gaming is super new. But I also feel like it does really important things and sort of represents like a huge shift in gaming culture towards inclusivity. And it bothers me that no one else is talking about that. So I've decided to talk about that for
Fuck
my
yes.
master's thesis.
Oh, I love
And I've
that.
done a shitload of background reading, and I have a lot of like mostly useless facts stored in my brain, which I'm going to get to share with all of you today. And I'm really excited about it. But to shift us a little bit into our warm-up, Skullie, how are you doing? How was your holidays?
Oh my God, my holidays were great, not without family member outbursts and people being super unhinged and out of pocket. But I would say like 80-85% of the holiday was like really great, exceptional, lots of resting. Um Honestly, like I feel like I'm at the age because when you get gifts when you're like a little kid, at least in my experience, it's like you get the really fun toys and like the things that like aren't really super practical. And then as you kind of like age out of it, you get more practical gifts like socks and like sweaters, where you're maybe not as excited about it, but you kind of realize that like this is adulthood or whatever. And I'm now in the stage of adulthood where I'm actually super boring and I'm super fucking jazzed to get like really nice socks. I got like this really awesome I got this really awesome like soup pan. Like this like really tall
Ooh,
like stew pot from my mom, and it's like stainless steel. It's like super bouge. Um and I'm
wow.
like so excited to use my new stew pan.
That rocks. That slaps.
Yeah, but then I also got like a really nice like tarot journal from my sister. It's like once a day like tarot, where they have like all these things like reading reflection or whatever, and then like but you fill in everything yourself. But the way it's set up is really cute. I'm excited to use that. Yeah, lots of good food, lots of cooking, very like much needed rest. Like I feel like I don't know. I don't know how deep we want to go into like American culture not allowing for vacation or rest, or just like
Yeah.
capitalism in general not allowing for vacation or rest. But I feel like for someone like me who's constantly go, 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 when you have those moments where you finally slow down, especially when it gets colder like this and like our bodies are naturally supposed to be slowing down and resting, it gives you like this refresher that like you didn't think you needed. Oh God, I ate so much good food and it was awesome. Like that's always such a highlight for the holidays for me. Is just like eating all of the best buttery, chocolatey, flaky, delicious, crispy, greasy food.
Mm,
Yeah.
so good.
How about you, my love?
My holidays were good. This was actually, I think, probably the best holiday season for me in a long time. Mostly, this is gonna sound a little bit wild. But I got my autism diagnosis this past year in May, and part of the reason why I made the choice to go get an autism diagnosis is because last holiday season was rough for me. Um, and because I went and got that diagnosis, I sort of am now able to recognize when I'm overstimulated, when I need to take a break, when, my brain is doing things that feel not normal to my family, but that are perfectly normal to me. And now, because I have this diagnosis, I can translate and I can set reasonable boundaries that take into account myself as like a whole person instead of like feeling bad for being overstimulated all the time. Because the holidays are very overstimulating. So, if you need a sign as an adult person to seek out an autism diagnosis, this can be your sign. It was very helpful for me. And this was, I think, the best holidays that I've had as an adult, just because like I know myself more. So
Yeah.
yay for that. That was jolly. Um,
Oh,
I also got to like rest and sleep a bunch, which was important because I was very burnt out. It was a very long semester last semester, and I feel like I have a new brain a little bit.
yes.
I feel like the brain cells that were like, no, please, we can't go on. We are so tired. Please, are no longer feeling that way.
Yes, the oven like clean cycle has processed, and I now feel like it very much. I'm like I feel a little bit like renewed. I feel like is I don't know, maybe not the right word, but like refreshed, maybe like
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
rejuvenated, whatever you want to
Yeah.
call it.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. Oh, the other gift I got that I already showed this to Earth, but I want to show the people. My sister got
Show
me
the
this.
people.
My sister got me this like
Ah!
awesome Pokemon sweater.
So for those of you who are just listening to the audio, it is Gengar on one side, and who's the little guy on the back, Skullie?
It's Miss Drevis's evolved form. I'm gonna look this up because I don't want to be embarrassed online.
Yeah. Well, anyway, it's like a really cute kind of haunted house landscape with a big Gengar on the front, and it's so adorable and so cozy and so on theme for our convo today.
Yes,
Love that.
Miss Magius, I think is
Miss
her name.
Magius.
Yes.
Yes.
And then there's also some
Stunning.
Zubats as well. Zubats
Yep.
and Golbats and all sorts of ghost types. But
Friggin' bats.
it's freaking bats. I love Halloween. Um, my sister, who is like the best gift giver, she got Christmas sweaters, Pokemon Christmas sweaters for our entire family. My mom, she got one for herself, and then like my mom, my dad, and my grandfather and me, we all had not quite matching because everybody's was different, but Christmas sweaters for each person. And she got me the Halloween one because she knows that I like Halloween so much better than Christmas, which was very sweet of her. But like my dad, who's also a gamer and also plays Pokemon and all these things, he got one that was like the traditional like blue snowflake design, like that like, Nordic snowflake design, right? And it had a Lapras on it, like a Lapras on the front, so it was like blues and light blues and whatever. And he got like
Cute.
he got like a compliment. He was like picking up takeout one day over like Christmas break, and he was like some like guy in his like 30s, like tattooed and like colored hair and stuff was like, "Is that a Lapras? That's a sick sweater, dude." And my dad was like, "Hey, thanks, man."
I love it. I think it's so cute and so sweet that your sister got sweaters for your whole family.
Yeah.
I don't come from a family of nerds. I'm kind of the only one in my family, so the idea of a whole family wearing Pokemon sweaters is like the family that I want to create for myself one day, you know?
Yeah, it's great. My grandfather doesn't play Pokemon, but the one that she got for him, it is like a green, like dark green, and then there's like silhouettes of trees, and then it's like a little
Mhm.
button-up sweater, and there's like a silhouette of a stantler, which is like the reindeer. So it kind of
Yes,
looks like a normal sweater if you don't
that's
know.
so smart.
So
Oh, how smart.
yeah,
I love it.
it's really really cute. She fucking nailed every single one. And then my mom loves like Pikachu and all that, so she's got like Pikachu and the Santa hat, and like they were all super cute. But that was like such a highlight. We took a picture with all of our Pokemon sweaters. I demanded. I was like, we need to take a picture with all of these sweaters because this is too cute. Hmm.
I love it. I also have two culture recommendations for you all that I consumed over the last week of my life that are very, very good. And I just wanted to share them. The first of which is really not new. It's but it's new to me because I finally caved and read this book. It's called Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. And my mom, so when I started talking to my mom about my thesis and the work that I'm doing, she was sort of like, "Oh, like tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow." And I was like, "Oh, you've read that book?" And she was sort of like, "Yeah, it's about these people who make video games." And I was like, "Oh, I got to read the book because it's my mother's one point of cultural reference to understand what it is I do." Um,
That's
and then I
so
started
funny.
reading it, and I tore through the whole thing in like 24 hours. It was so compelling and like emotional, and it made me cry. I can't remember the last time a piece of fiction made me cry. And like not at a moment I was expecting, but it's basically like this very beautiful story about these friends who make games together. Their lives and the things that are important to them and like the ups and downs of their relationship, and without giving away too many spoilers, it is just a very kind, thoughtful reflection on all of the beautiful things that games are and that games can do. From like the perspective of this woman writer who is just so incredible. I would give anything for the amount of talent she has in her little pinky toe. Like,
Oh,
oh, it's so great.
yeah, that
So if you're looking for a new book, highly recommend Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow.
yeah, that book keeps coming up for me in like spaces online. Like I've seen it talked about on TikTok extensively,
Yeah.
particularly like in queer circles of just like really enjoying it. And
Yeah.
I have such a long to read list this year. It starts with it's The Locked Tomb, and then
Yeah.
Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow, and then like all of the other books on my
Yeah.
fucking to read list. I'm so,
Oh, so many things. And I
yeah.
just keep giving you more things,
I
which is like on
know.
me.
She just keeps giving
This
me
is the
homework, guys. It's the
this is the most annoying part about being friends with me is I will give you homework. I
no.
will.
I do love it
And it's
though. I do love it.
oh, but I loved it. I really, really loved it. And I loved that my mom read it and it meant something to her, and that now I get to get on the phone with her and talk to her about what she got out of it. Because my mom is very anti video game, or at least she was for a very long time very anti video game. Video
Mm.
games were not allowed in our house growing up, and that it's kind of interesting that I've sort of become like a rising game studies scholar having grown up in a house with no video games, because that's usually not the case. Most people who are into games and game studies are people who've been playing since they were old enough to hold a controller. And for me, you know, my interest in games comes from analog games, that, you know, tabletop games and board games and card games and games that I played with, you know, my father growing up, because my mom was so anti video game.
Hmm.
And you know, I think that my discovery of video games as an adult has been both such a personal joy and also like such a weird little professional niche to have found myself in. But I think it's cool, and I think it's a thing that makes my work on games interesting, because I didn't have that experience growing up, and so my perspective is like a little bit different. But anyway, shout out to Denise for telling me that video games would rot my brain, and thank you for being wrong. so,
Love you, Denise.
so love
Shout
you,
out.
Denise. That's thing number one that I wanted to talk about. Thing number two that I wanted to talk about is Dochi's new album, Alligator Bites Never Heal, which is so fucking good. It's so fucking good. I'm obsessed. I've listened to it over and over and over again all week. If you haven't heard of Dochi, she's an amazing rapper and music artist, and just has such a unique perspective and point of view. And I am really just such a fan. Alligator Bites Never Heal. Go listen to it.
Love it.
Fucking good.
Amazing. I have been feeling sleepy since it's been so fucking frigid and goddamn cold and dark out. It's been like 20 degrees for the past like 3 days. And it's been so miserable and windy outside. And I, like, the new moon was like 3 days ago, I think, which is typically a time when people are feeling very tired and very not like worn down necessarily, but like you need to rest. It's a need to rest, right? It got me thinking back to our conversation last time about how, you know, holidays and rituals and various celebrations around this time of year are all surrounding rest you know, eating good food and like knowing that the light will come soon. And I was talking to my sister and she was like, God, she's like, these past few weeks, I have just felt so fucking tired. And we've been like in a period of like rest too. And for me in my head, because I'm like a little bit of self-loathing, I'm like, I'm feeling tired because I've been going, and now I took a minute to rest, and now I'm just going to be restful and resting and lazy, and I'm not going to get anything fucking done. And that's so not true. That's so not true.
Yeah.
Don't say that. But I've been seeing a lot more things online recently, like reminding me, like I saw something on Instagram that was talking about all the different like rituals and holidays from ancient traditions, different countries, especially particularly in like Scandinavia and like all of these countries that experience heavy snow and lots of darkness. Of like, this is what your body should be feeling. This is what your ancestors felt thousands of years ago. They had whole like months of rest around this time because this was so deeply entrenched in like being and existing.
Yeah.
So just like, I don't know, a reminder to the audience, but also sharing that like I've been feeling very much in that space lately. And just knowing that like it's okay. It's all good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's winter.
It's fucking
Winter
winter.
is the dark resting time. Time to be cozy and drink, nice warm beverages and wear your sweater and play a cozy game.
And I know that's right. I know that's fucking right. The other thing that I got to do this weekend, which was lovely, and resigning myself to actually resting and like being a person, was playing D&D in the woods in a little wood cabin with my
Woo!
friends. Heating up some hot cheese and eating some bread and cheese and jam and making some tea and coffee and just playing D&D in the woods with your friends.
That sounds phenomenal.
Would highly recommend if you have a place to go. One of my friends' family members has this really nice like log cabin in like the middle of the fucking woods in northern New Hampshire, and they were gone for the weekend. So she was like, "Do you want to like go up to this house in the middle of the woods where there's ice everywhere and it's fucking it's gonna be like 10 degrees at night, but it'll be really fun and we can just like hang out." And I was like, fuck yes. We got up there Friday night and we just played board games like all fucking weekend. I made some baked brie with roasted garlic, and I brought up some fresh bread, which was like, like $3 at like Market Basket or whatever. But it was just like little simple. I got some jam, some like little like Stonewall
Yeah.
Kitchen jam I got for Christmas from Shem's
Oh,
grandmother.
sounds dreamy.
Yeah,
Dreamy, dreamy.
it was fucking delightful. And I literally drove back this morning. I texted Earth because I was like, "Can we push our podcast back 1 hour? Because I'm driving 2.5 hours from northern New Hampshire." But I made it, and I'm so glad, and I'm here to chat with you. And there's no place I'd rather
Aw, shucks.
be.
Thanks.
It was nice. I cleared my head. I unplugged. I also did a lot of writing, which was so nice. I feel like I've been so stunted in my creativity since just like this just these past few months have been insane. But it was nice to just like be in a new place, being in a new setting, and being relaxed and unplugged and not online and not thinking about the TikTok ban and like all of these things that
Yep.
it made me like clear my head and like feel actually emboldened to write something that felt good. Um,
Yeah. Hell yeah. I love that.
I have a question for you. How
Yes.
how has your experience been trying to restructure your algorithms on other platforms? Because I feel like I've been trying to distance myself from TikTok, trying to like recalibrate my algorithms on other platforms, and it's just not the same. Like I'll occasionally go
It's
on
so
TikTok to
hard.
like check my notifications, but I've been trying to like restructure Instagram and like all these things because I'm following a bunch of accounts on like from like dropout creators of like Sam Reich and like Vic
Mm-hmm.
Michaelis, and and I feel like it's just not there yet. But I don't know. How have you been coming along?
Yeah. Well, for me, I use Instagram quite a bit for cosplay stuff. So my algorithm on my cosplay account on Instagram is pretty tailored to me and to the things I enjoy. I see a lot of fan art. I repost a lot of fan art to stories. That's like 85% of what I do on that account.
Every time I see
um,
one of Earth's stories, it's like cosplay, fan art, or it's like inspirational quote that like makes me feel really good. Like it's like you're doing
Yeah.
okay. Like remember to breathe. Like
Yeah.
all of these things. Like
Yeah.
I love watching your stories. It's always good
Thank
stuff.
you.
You're
I think they're
welcome.
very nice. I try to make them nice. If you would also like to see my nice Instagram stories, please follow me on Instagram. That would
Yeah.
be very, very happy,
Hmm.
very jolly. Um, so yeah, no, I feel like that platform is sort of tailored to me. And then weirdly, so TikTok is kind of an interesting place to get information from and about the world.
Hmm.
And I've been sort of using Reddit as a replacement.
Really?
Yeah, in part because I have to use Reddit for my thesis. I assigned myself Reddit as one of the platforms that I was going to look at cozy gaming communities on Reddit. And I've also sort of started using it for myself, particularly in terms of like niche subcultures. Uh,
Hmm.
like I've been getting really into lately Barbie collecting, which is something that I was into as a small child and have sort of like come back to now as an adult with more adult money, not a ton of adult money because I'm a grad student, I'm really poor, but like like just Barbie collecting is nice because it's just enough adult money
Yeah.
that it feels like I still get to have a hobby. But the Barbie Reddit Facebook page. Oh my god. Reddit, the subreddit. I know the words. I promise I understand digital spaces. The Barbie subreddit is my new favorite place because it's mostly just people like talking about their super niche special interest, and like
Yeah.
for me that's jolly. And so when I'm not on, spending I feel like with TikTok, every time I'm on TikTok these days, I feel like I'm spending time with someone who's dying, you know?
No,
And I'm
it's
kind of
very
like,
much
I,
giving
I
that.
want to
Yes.
remember this as it was,
Yes.
have some nice final moments while we still have it here.
Yeah.
And when I'm not doing that, I'm on the Reddit Barbie subreddit
I'm
because
screaming. Oh
it's
my
so
God.
escapist. So it's like it's a little bit of me being intentional about my algorithms and a little bit of me being in denial and like going to Barbie Land to forget my
Right.
troubles.
Right. No, 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 no. I think that's totally valid and I support you in this. That's incredible.
Thank you.
I
Thank
agree. I think
you.
like I Reddit is one of those things that's like very good and bad. You know, like the duality of the internet is very represented on Reddit, where I feel the same. Where really niche communities, you can find some really good info. I found a lot of good like
Yeah.
witchy advice on Reddit. Lots of good stuff if you know where to look, if you know how to navigate it.
Don't just scroll. The thing that I do is I never ever scroll the feed because it always
Yeah.
tries to feed me stuff that I don't want. Like am I the asshole posts or like things that like people think are funny that are actually quite cruel, you know? You know
Mm,
how internet humor can be that way sometimes?
yeah.
So I go to the fandom subreddits that I know are good and then tell myself that I'll recalibrate my feed one day to stop showing me stuff that I find frankly repugnant.
Where do you get your news? What subreddit is the news?
I don't get my news on Reddit.
Oh, okay.
Um, I get my news through Instagram,
Yeah.
mostly by following pages and creators that I trust that have been sort of vetted based on like other places I go online. Bahar under the desk news, who's a journalist, a legit journalist and a citizen journalist, and who recently got like a whole bunch of flack from NPR where they were trying to like gotcha them about how TikTok journalists aren't real journalists. But I do also follow them on IG and I get news from them on IG as well as on TikTok. Yeah, it's just tricky. It's tricky because
Yeah.
the TikTok algorithm is so immediate, and so it's good for like letting you know immediately what's going on in the world. Also, like I get emails from the New York Times. I know that's old school,
Yeah.
and I'm fortunate because as a grad student, I get access to the New York Times for free. So
Oh.
I don't have to pay for it, and it just gets sent directly to my inbox. And like that's how I keep up to date with like things like important news things that are going on in the world,
Yeah.
other than on social. But I wouldn't do it if it wasn't free because
Mhm.
again, I'm super poor.
Yeah. I feel like the ritual in terms of like how I'm perusing Instagram from now on is just going through my follower list because I feel
Yeah.
like the feed on Instagram is so garbo most of the time. At least for me, I feel like I need to just spend more time on, which I don't want to do. I don't want to spend more time on Instagram. But I feel like I just need to go through my follower list and just like whenever I want to go on there and find something, I'm like, okay, what's this person saying? What's this person saying? All right, time to log off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will also say that like creating a separate account for my fandom stuff on Instagram that's not my personal account was very helpful for algorithm stuff. Because the
Yeah.
algo on the account that is me that my parents follow is not the same as the algo on my fandom account. And I like it that way,
Yeah.
actually. It's kind of interesting to get to log into two different accounts and there are two completely different algorithms and both of them are me. It's just that one of them is half a part of my life. They're like segmented in
Yeah.
a strange way. I
I
don't know.
love no,
It's interesting.
I completely understand that. I love that because with my Happy Pancake one, it's a lot of like current events. It's a lot of like Hassan Piker and a lot of leftist like chats and voices. Sam
Yeah.
Cedar, but like with my Skullie by the Sea one, it's all like fandom and fan edits and a 4 hour deep dive on this like one episode of this show. Like, it's very, very different vibes. So I love that and I totally appreciate that. I don't know that I would make another one though, because I just don't want to be on Instagram all that much. So I'm like, I would
Yeah.
rather just combine it and just try to get both things
Yeah.
to do what I want. But I don't know. Maybe I should just make it two separate ones to try to trick the Instagram algorithm into giving me what I want. Just be really specific on one and then really specific on another. Who knows? We'll see how it goes. But yeah, no, the idea of like being on Instagram like some with someone who's dying is so very real.
Oh yeah, on TikTok. Yeah.
Yeah, being on TikTok, yeah.
And we don't know if TikTok is terminal, but it's looking like it might be that way.
Yeah.
So yeah, I started recording like a goodbye skit between it's myself having
Oh.
a conversation with Mama Ray for TikTok.
I really want to do something like that as well with my Italian Inco one because
Yeah.
I feel like I've been in denial. I've been putting off like actually putting on my TikTok accounts. Here's where to find me. All these things
Yep.
because like I
I have
have
two.
everything linked, but I haven't like that making that video feels like the real goodbye, and I'm not ready to do that yet. And I've been talking to Shem
Valid.
too. He's like, if you don't do it, you're gonna be really upset. And I was like, I know, I need to just do it. So I don't know.
He's so
Maybe I'll do it
wise.
today.
He's so wise for that. Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah, I've recorded my half of it, the half that is me, and I'll get into Mama Ray later this week and record her half and edit it
yeah.
together.
I made a new YouTube channel just to put all of my TikTok stuff on it because I was like, I don't know if there's really gonna be a fit for everything on either of the places that I've cultivated because all the stuff that I'm
Yeah.
doing right now is like long form shit. And
Mhm.
frankly, I don't want to fuck up my algorithm like for what is being shown to my audience. Like, I think I just got to like start fresh and just like plug all of my TikTok stuff on. It's gonna be it's called Happier Pancake. I'll have it linked below. But
I love it.
so that I think it's just gonna be like because I also want to do short form content in the future.
Yeah.
And because I don't think like I was in a space years ago where I was only doing long form content and I wasn't happy just doing that. Like I love the balance of both because for me I want my long form content to be really good and really polished, which is traditional for YouTube as a platform. I mean, currently, old school YouTube was not polished, but for YouTube as it is now, long form polished content is like what gets promoted in the algorithm, right? And it's what I like to make and what I like to present in my long form stuff. But with short term, it's just so much less pressure and it's
Yep.
easy and you can make stupid stuff that isn't intellectual or like you can make short form stuff that is intellectual too. But for
You
me I'm
just
like
don't have
the
to
pressure
try as hard.
exactly. You don't have to try as hard. You don't have to put in as much time or effort. It can be stupid, it can be funny, it can be horny, it can be silly. Like it could be whatever and it doesn't like to me that's the type that I'm like this doesn't matter whatever I put out it's like whatever I like having that release because I enjoy making content and I enjoy posting and I enjoy making videos and making jokes and being silly But like, I don't know, YouTube is so annoying where like you can't put that on the same channel. If you have like
Yeah.
serious stuff, you can't put silly stuff there or it's gonna fuck up your algorithm. Either one is gonna get a ton of views
Yeah.
and one's gonna get none, or none of your stuff is gonna be shown to the right audience. And that pisses
That's
me
so
off.
fucked.
It's so fucked. It pisses me off so much because TikTok is not like that. TikTok, you send it out into the ether, and while sure your audience can be like catered to like what you do typically, you with TikTok you send it out into the ether and whoever watches it and shares it and it can be shown to whatever. Like I have videos on my TikTok with the same amount of views where one of which I'm talking about like how much I love like anime dilfs and how badly I want to fuck these fictional characters. And on the same channel that has like hundreds of thousands of views, and then on the same channel I go into like the nuances of like sexual assault in media and how it pisses me off how
Yep.
like so many different depictions of sexual assault in media are done so poorly. And those videos have the same amount of views on the same channel.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I'm ranting at this point, but like I'm
No, this is interesting.
yeah.
This is inspiring an idea for a paper about like the tyranny of video platform algorithms that could be an interesting opportunity to interview people who used to create on TikTok and like how they feel about the TikTok ban, sort
Yeah.
of flatlining them as content creators.
Yeah, you would certainly
These
have
are
an
that'd be an
exceptional
interesting
pool of
paper.
people to pull from. I
Yeah,
mean, like
facts.
all your mutuals and like your own personal experience too. I would be eager to read that.
For this serious corner, we've decided to do things a little bit differently. And Skullie is going to interview me, and I've previewed these questions, so I do have some like facts and stuff pulled up so I can share correct information with everybody. But take it away, Skullie.
I'm so excited. Okay, in contemplating these questions, I was like thinking, I was like, what is like the first cozy game? Like, what is credited or considered the first like cozy game, the OG, the original? Like, what started this genre?
Yes, I love that question. So, cozy games initially emerge out of sort of a series of games that arise for the Japanese market in the late 90s and early 2000s, including most notably Harvest Moon, which was released in 1996, and the first Animal Crossing game, which came out in 2001. These are sort of games that instead of focusing on combat and competition, really hone in on the gamification of softness and safety and abundance. So in early cozy games, you see a lot of sort of community building aspects and farming as like a really common way of gamifying like abundance and being able to like control your own economic destiny, for lack of a better way of putting it. And scholars have sort of suggested that you could correlate the creation of the genre of cozy games with like rising global anxieties about politics and climate change. And whether that's like causation or correlation is up for debate, but I do think it is interesting. And we definitely see like a big resurgence and renaissance of cozy gaming, and like the term cozy games emerges post 2016, post Donald Trump election, which I feel like is significant because again we see the reemergence of like global anxieties about big bad things happening in the world, and so games sort of have this cozy turn.
Yeah, I love that. I feel that's so funny that Harvest Moon is like seen as like the first ever cozy game because I actually played Harvest Moon way back in the
Yeah.
day. I still have it. I still have my DS. I could theoretically still play it. That would be so fun. Because yeah, so many games that were really popular from that era were like, you know, Mario Party and Pokemon and like all of these battle-oriented
Mm-hmm.
games, level-oriented games.
Mm-hmm.
That was like the first one for me that felt really different and
Yeah,
it evoked very different emotions for me whilst playing it.
totally.
Awesome.
Totally.
I would love to know if you have a little bit more on like the history of cozy games, the progression of the genre, where it started versus where we are now. Tell me about that.
Hell yeah, absolutely. So I alluded a little bit to the post 2016 world and the emergence of the term cozy games. As far as we know, oh hello cat, my cat has joined us to talk about. She's sitting on my lap.
Hello.
The the most coziest little creature come to our cozy conversation. So I alluded to the post 2016 world, the sort of academic point of reference for the emergence of the term cozy games, which is kind of an umbrella term more than it is a genre, because it encompasses a lot of different types of games that explore coziness in different ways. But that term comes from a game developers conference called Project Horseshoe, which has been around since 2006. And in November of 2017, there was a panel on cozy games with a bunch of game developers who all sort of got together, and they produced this report, which is called Coziness in Games, an exploration of safety, softness, and satisfied needs. That report is available for free on the internet. If you would like to read it, I will give the link to Skullie so we can put it in the description. But that's sort of like when academics write about cozy games as an umbrella term, that's the point that they all sort of point to, is like, this, I think, is the moment where the term cozy games was coined. In academic scholarship, there's like a whole bunch of different kind of games that kind of fall under the umbrella of cozy games. We have ambient games, friendship games, personal games, small games, wholesome games, and empathy games, all of which can sort of be thought of as describing different aspects of what we now think of as cozy games. I feel like, and this is something that is coming up a lot in my research, cozy games emerged as sort of a popularized term and like an identity for gamers who started to think of themselves as cozy gamers post 2020, post lockdown, and with the sort of cultural resurgence of Animal Crossing and cozy games as like a defining type of gameplay that really helped people negotiate the anxieties and uncertainties of the pandemic. And so it's kind of like this post-pandemic born digital term that comes from a whole bunch of different places, including the game industry and player practices. And like, so often when we talk about games and how things are understood within games, you have to think about like all those different people and like the relationship between the gaming industry and the people who play games, because game players are so much more of an active audience in terms of constructing the piece of media than like film audiences say. Because with film and TV, like, we have fandom, and fandom is sort of off on its own thing, but with games are interactive. So the player response is sort of an active part of the product, and there's a little bit more of an involvement and a relationship between player communities and developers and designers. So there's a reciprocity there that gets drawn upon when you're coming up with these definitions, things like cozy games.
I feel like also there's been a little bit of a bleed from cozy games into things like cozy fantasy books, which I hadn't really heard of before, like in my adulthood. Like, someone correct me in the comments if this is wrong, but other than like children's fantasy books, I don't know if I've seen a lot of like cozy focused games, because you have things like Lord of the Rings, where like Lord of the Rings is obviously like the Shire is very cozy, but this is ultimately like a epic adventure about defeating
Yeah.
the greatest evil in the land. And like, while there are cozy aspects to
Yeah.
it, I wouldn't describe Lord of the Rings as like a cozy fantasy story by any means, you know. But there's this emergence of
Yep.
like meeting your like orc lover at a tavern or whatever, and you live a cute life together in a bakery or whatever, like things like that, where I'm like,
Yes.
this is delightful. And as someone who adores fantasy in particular, like fantasy is my favorite genre, it is so nice to have things like that, because so much of like epic fantasy is so much bloodshed, trauma, and suffering. Like, if we think of like Game of Thrones, for example, where like the majority of Game of Thrones, it's one of the most like famous fantasy stories like in the world. There's so much turmoil that like sometimes you don't want to fucking read that, but also you want to see like like swords and magic and like all this stuff. I think that might
Yeah.
like and I don't know if we want to talk about like Harry Potter or anything like this, but like maybe that like is part of why Harry Potter was like so popular, because again, that's more of an epic
Mm-hmm.
story. But because there's so many cozy aspects of Harry Potter that I think make it so much more appealing than
Yeah.
it solely being about like defeating the greatest evil.
Yeah. No, and it's interesting you should say that. because there are a lot of people who conceive of Hogwarts Legacy as a cozy game,
Mm.
even though there are parts of the game that are really combat heavy. Personally, I will never play Hogwarts Legacy for a whole host of reasons, but I think it's interesting. That point of comparison feels very significant. It's also like there's probably a big overarching like cultural studies argument to be made about the turn towards cozy culture in a post-pandemic world. As you pointed out, not just with games, but also with literature and with like home decor aesthetics, like
Yes.
cottagecore is an
Oh
inherently
gosh.
cozy aesthetic. And it's very, I just think it's very well. And then like when you look at sort of the dark side of that, she would like to get up. There she goes. Say goodbye to the kitty. The dark side of that, right, is this kind of return to traditional values, trad wife culture,
Yeah.
which is just another side of the same coin, but it all feels like different things that are kind of reacting to the unpredictability of the world,
Mhm.
and the anxiety of living in the world.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of interesting to notice all of the different points of comparison.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. I like I think I mean we've talked about this before, but like I hear trad wives talking about how like I don't want to work anymore. I just want to be able to like, have my husband work and I stay home and like do all these things. I'm like, babe, I'm like, you don't want to be a trad wife. You don't want to live in late stage capitalism. Like you want like,
Right.
universal basic
Yep.
income. Like there's like,
Yeah.
you know, like babe, like let's be so real. Let's be so real right
Yeah.
now. But yeah,
Yeah.
no, the seeking of comfort. And I do feel like a lot of, pieces of media in particular that incorporate cozy, because I feel like, and we can dive into this as well, but just like how cozy games and cozy media is often looked down upon or seen as less than compared
Yeah.
to, I know you said it wasn't technically a genre, but for the sake of explaining this, like other
Yeah.
types
Yeah.
of
You
media,
can think
other
about it
genres.
as a genre.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But how it's often seen as like less serious or like less important, right? But I've found that media of all forms, not just games, but TV, literature, movies that incorporate aspects that are cozy and are safe and are sweet and emotional and like very softness. Those are
Yeah.
the products and the properties and the franchises that succeed the most because you're not just appealing to a very specific demographic of people that are comfortable with extreme turmoil and bloodshed and things like that. When you have those comfortable aspects, those are the products and the franchises that succeed because they have such a mass appeal and because there are so many of us that are just seeking comfort. Even
Yeah.
if there are certain aspects that may be darker or more twisted or whatever, having
Mm-hmm.
those moments like in Lord of the Rings, like in Harry Potter, Baldur's Gate 3, My Hero Academia, for example, like
Right.
having these aspects of safety and friendship and softness that can buffer some really intense storylines and not only like allow more people to see your product and like be more interested in like the piece of media and the thing that you're creating, but also just like make it a safer place for people that like may want to enjoy it but like can't because it's like either very triggering for them or whatever aspects.
Yep. Yep.
Like that is significant and that's important. And like if you're wanting to tell a story, why would you shy away from something that would ultimately not only make your like if you want to say one specific thing, fine, whatever. Art is art and say whatever we want to say. But if you are
Mm-hmm.
denying your audience from like being in a place of safety, I don't know. I think that that's fucked up a little bit, a little bit, a little
Yeah.
bit. Especially with so many aspects of culture that are portrayed poorly, like traumatic aspects of culture that are portrayed like really poorly, like sexual assault, for example. Again, I've talked about this at length. You can talk about those topics and still allow it to be safe. You
Right.
know,
Yeah.
anyway, we veered heavily, but
No, I don't think so, because you were gonna ask me about cultural significance next, right?
Yes,
And
I
we were
want to talk
sort of
about.
kind of on that topic a little bit.
Yeah, I want to talk about cultural significance. I want to talk about why it's so important. And then I also want to like discuss like, and this can be a separate part, or if you want to talk about this here, if you feel it's interconnected,
Yeah.
but like why cozy games are looked down upon and why that is a
Yep.
huge mistake to do so. Like,
Mm-hmm. Okay, period. Let's start with that because it's a big swing and I like a big swing.
let's go.
So the important thing to understand about why cozy games are looked down upon is that the gaming industry arose because the military wanted to teach people how to be better at war. That's why we get video games. The first video games were simulations designed to teach military personnel how to fly planes and how to use battle tactics and all these different things. So, you get both this industry, so that, like, the birth of the game industry inherently has like a relationship towards this sort of like hyper masculine, violent, competitive world because like that's how initial video games got developed and greenlit and funded. Um, and things are shifting quite a lot because there's such a huge commercial market and people have realized that because we live in this very complicated world that is filled with anxiety, not everybody wants to play war games. Not everybody wants to compete. And I think it's interesting that cozy gamers are sort of emerging as this like subculture of gamers, and they're really unified by the fact that they don't want to fight each other. Which is like a little bit radical when you consider the history of like where video games have come from and like what the culture around video games and video gameplay has been. The thing about safety and abundance and softness that gets diminished all the time is that these things are sort of constantly and historically feminine coded. And so, in answer to your question about like why do people look down on cozy games, because of sexism. Straight up. That's why.
Somehow,
and that's
somehow,
not to say and that's not to say that like if you like safety and abundance and softness, you're like a girl or you're feminine because that's just how these things are coded, right? And it's not masculine to not want to fight people because we associate masculinity with violence and femininity with non-violence, which is so fucked. Like this is one of the instruments of patriarchy and sort of like conditioning this binary split. But like that's my answer to your question.
yeah, period. And you know what? Somehow deep in my heart, I knew that was the answer.
You knew that. Yeah, I know. I know you did. But yeah, so, but like that's thing number one that makes cozy gaming so culturally significant is that you have these gamers of all genders who
Hmm.
are sort of saying, no, I don't want to play violent games, actually, and I don't want to be stressed out, and I would still like to play games, but I would like to do it in a different way, please. Can you make me a different model? Can you gamify different kinds of things? And so, like, the industry is really being forced to expand its definition of, like, what is worthy of gameplay. What kinds of things are worthy of modeling in a game. And I think that's stupid cool. I think that's incredibly, incredibly cool. So that's thing number one about why I think cozy games are culturally significant. Thing number two is that when you have a culture with a bunch of people who don't so much care about winning, they come up with other priorities for gameplay. And that sort of leads to the inclusion of marginalized people who have not normally had access to games and gaming, because they're sort of like welcome. There's not this inherent like "fuck you, I'm here to compete with you" energy. So there's a lot more sort of community resources that are put in towards tutorials and guides and helping people pick things up and sort of onboarding people into becoming gamers who might not ordinarily have been gamers in the first place, or who might not have access or time in their own lives. This includes like people who, gaming. Okay, so let me think of a better way to articulate this. in the past, right, you have this stereotype of the gamer as a person who has all the time and resources in the world to put into this very expensive and all-consuming hobby that's about getting good. And if you don't have the time and resources, you're shit out of luck. You're not welcome. Nobody wants to play with you because you suck and you're not fun to compete against. Cozy games, and even more so casual games, which is sort of like a different way of thinking genre of games, provide access to games and gameplay, digital gameplay, to people who don't have that time and don't have those resources. I'm thinking about like moms. I'm thinking about people who work
Yeah.
14-hour days. I'm thinking about people who have a whole bunch of in-person obligations to their community who, you know, don't want to spend all that time alone and online. Those people are cozy gamers and they're casual gamers. And actually, like the vast majority of gamers are people who play casual games on their phones. So when we think about like who is a gamer, when you think about the image of who a gamer is, that's probably statistically not the majority of people who play games. Like we often don't
Right.
think of people who play casual games on their phone as real gamers.
Mm-hmm.
And why not? Why not? Because they're playing games and they're playing games at their break time and they're playing games on the train to and from work or school. And so why not? Why are they not gamers? Because of this assumption that to be a gamer is to want to compete and to dominate. And so, but I feel like with the introduction of cozy games, that definition is sort of shifting, and it's also like including more people. So that's point number 2. And then yeah, point number 3. Oh, I just made point number 3. Yeah, point number 3 is really about like, because of cozy games and casual games, you have like this emergence of a different kind of gaming community and like a major shift in what it means to participate in online gaming culture. Cozy gaming communities are fascinating to study because people are so helpful.
Mm-hmm.
They're so helpful. Anyone can come with a question, and instantly there are 5 or 6 people who have an answer to your question. There are conversations that take place in these communities about inclusivity. How can I make my gameplay more accessible, you know, if high frame rates are really disorienting and I get nauseous, or if I can't hold a game controller for a long period of time, like how do I play this game? And people have suggestions and they have answers. And so there's like a whole big group of people who have always wanted to play but have never had access, who are sort of coming into community with other people around games. And like that facilitates not just digital interactions, but like real social interactions and friendships. Because the thing about games and people is that games have always sort of facilitated connection between people. When you think about like ancient games like chess and Go, it's always about players playing with each other and that, you know, being in relationship over a piece of media. And cozy games are facilitating that kind of connection in a really neat and interesting way. And I think that's fascinating. I think it's fascinating. I think it's really cool. I think it's good for people's mental health.
Yeah, I mean, like during lockdown, everybody visiting everybody's Animal Crossing islands, like, you know,
Yeah.
or hopping on comms, like a lot of my friends or my sister's friends, like if you live in different states or just even if you just like don't have the time, like if you work different hours and you really can only talk or chat or interact like via gaming comms, like that is your social interaction, you know, and I mean, like, it's certainly representative of a larger problem we have, but it's something that can help us sort of get through. I want to know because you've kind of gone into a little bit, you know, abundance, safety, and softness. Are there any other like qualifiers for cozy games? I know you mentioned different categories. There's like ambient cozy games and then like other ones. I'm very curious about the terminology.
Yes. Oh my god, definitions. My favorite.
Yay!
Yum 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 yum.
Everybody grab your flashcards. Grab your flashcards. There will be a
Literally
quiz.
like the first third of any academic piece of writing you ever read is the academic like going down a long rabbit hole about definitions.
I
So
love
this
it. I
is
love
like
it. I
so
love it.
delicious. This is
Yes.
so delicious and tasty to me. So So I'm going to read a couple of definitions from a really, really important article by Agata Waskowicz and Martina Bacon, who are Polish academics who wrote this really important article about cozy gaming that came out in 2020 in the Journal of Gaming and Virtual Worlds. So in sort of conversation with the game designers at Project Horseshoe, they define cozy games as referring to a very particular set of rules and visual patterns that strongly evoke the fantasy of safety, abundance, and softness. The three described concepts refer to gameplay, to world building, and to the audio-visual level of a game. And so by creating environments that by default provide safety and abundance, cozy games help players to seek the fulfillment of different kinds of needs, including love and belonging needs, self-esteem needs, self-actualization needs. And instead of forcing players to fight threats and to nurture their health, cozy games offer an abundance of things that allow you to do that. They eliminate imminent danger and sort of focus on creating a sense of belonging by performing tasks related to the improvement of your life vis-a-vis your home, your social interactions, and different like kinds of self-actualization, which is interesting. So they basically gamify like all the things that you need to be like a healthy and good person by
Right, like a
taking away
well-adjusted
threats and
human. Yeah.
danger. Yeah, literally. And so, we talk about coziness kind of as an aesthetic that can be applied to any number of type of games that do these things. And they sort of make this distinction between different kinds of applications of a cozy aesthetic. There are games where the cozy aesthetic is applied coherently. And that means sort of the whole game you can think of as cozy game. There's never any violence. Everything sort of fits within this very broad definition of safety, abundance, and softness. So coherently cozy, that's thing one. Thing two, we would call dissonantly cozy, where for example, the aesthetics and gameplay might sort of reflect coziness, but there are things about the world that are like sort of uncozy. A good example of this might be the game Stray, which is where you play as a stray cat,
Oh,
and the game sort of
yeah.
like it's cozy because you're playing as a cat and
It's
you're sort of making cat
puzzles.
friends. There are
Yeah.
puzzles, exactly, and there's sort of no imminent threat, but also the
The
game is
world is spooky.
post-apocalyptic.
Yeah.
The world is spooky, the world is, dead, there's no more humans anymore, and so there's a little bit of that kind of emotional dissonance that happens when you play that game.
Yeah.
There's a cozy game that I really love that's called Spiritfarer, which has, incredibly cozy aesthetics, really commonly cozy gameplay that's about nurturing the people on your boat, but also the game is about being like a ferryman in the underworld, and your job is to sort of like ferry lost souls to different places and help them like process their unfinished business so
Oh
that they
my
can sort of move
God.
on and be done being shades in the underworld. And it's very heavy and like will break your heart. So
Yeah.
like I would classify that as like a dissonantly cozy game.
I
Um,
also need to play that right now. That is
oh,
so
it's so good. I'm gonna talk about it more later because it's
okay.
one of my favorite games of all time,
Perfect,
and
perfect.
I think it's fucking brilliant. Um, and then third, you have games that are situationally cozy. And actually, you've touched on this a little bit, where like, you were speaking about Lord of the Rings. Lord of the Rings as a piece of media can be thought of as situationally cozy. Because on the one hand, you have the big epic battles and you have all of this sort of like dangerous world shit going on. And then on the other hand, you have these incredibly tender, like safe moments between friends
Yes.
and,
Oh,
beautiful roaring fires and lovely verdant landscapes. And so, like, the Legend of Zelda games could be thought of as situationally cozy. Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, super situationally cozy games. Baldur's Gate 3
I was
could be
just
thought
gonna
of
say
as
what
situationally cozy. Yes, absolutely. And this is kind of an interesting taxonomy, and part of me wonders if like there maybe should be more precise language about games that are
right.
situationally cozy, and like whether they should be thought of as cozy games or whether there's like another way of thinking about them, just as games that are like that have some tenderness to them,
Mm-hmm.
and does tenderness make a game cozy? These are interesting questions. I'm sure that academics will be pondering for some time because academics love definitions. But like basically that's how the big smarty pantses of the world define what a cozy game is, and sort of like how the industry defines what a cozy game is. Um, and it's very interesting talking to people who play cozy games and engage in cozy game communities, because they when I ask them to define what cozy games are, sometimes they touch on all those points, and sometimes like there are some points that feel really important to them and to the way that they play
Right.
games, and other points that are like so unimportant.
Hmm.
Um, and I just think that's cool. And I think it's neat that it's also kind of like a player defined and community defined term. Different online communities define cozy games in different ways, particularly in their rules about like what kinds of games you're allowed to post about.
I think it makes sense that there's like some discourse because like obviously in things that are comfortable and safe, that's going to be different for everyone. That's going to be different for most people. Everyone's going to have a different definition or a different idea of what makes them feel comfortable or cozy or safe, you know?
Yeah.
Um, but I love that. I love situational cozy games. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
I feel like and I'm sort of like reevaluating the things that I've enjoyed in the past and I'm like, yeah, it's been primarily situational cozy games where like maybe the
Mm-hmm.
cozy aspect isn't the main focus or isn't necessarily like the
Yeah.
rule so to speak, but like it's a significant part that enhances the
Yep.
playability and the experience of the game for me.
Me too.
Love that. We talked a little bit about this of like why we love cozy games, but is there anything else you want to talk about of like the psychology of like cozy games and like why they're so important, what we get from cozy games that we don't
Yeah.
get from other games?
Sure, absolutely. So I will preface this by saying that I am not a psychologist. And if you are listening to this and you are a psychologist and you want to, collab with a game studies person to write about cozy games, hit me up because I think your perspective is very needed in this space. But like, just as like a top down from a culture first view, like the gamification of safety, softness, and abundance is good for you. I think that the gamification of most things is good for you. It allows you to sort of like enact your fantasies in a safe space. Even the gamification of violence sometimes is good for you,
Yeah.
because it allows you to imagine yourself into a different reality and to play on instincts that are deeply human. And so like the argument that violent video games are net bad, I think is bullshit.
Yeah.
And the same is true of cozy games. Games are helpful for figuring out your shit. There's a whole reason why play therapy is a thing. Like play is good for you. So that's thing number one. Thing number two, which I feel like is actually super important, because this is one of the reasons why cozy games get looked down on, is that like they're not frustrating.
Mhm.
Um,
The
Cozy games,
challenge is
and
different.
yeah,
Yeah.
they prioritize accessibility in a whole bunch of ways, and you see this in game affordances where like you're always reminded what the different buttons do, or you're sort of prompted, or the activities that you can do in the game feel very easy. There aren't like complicated button combos that you have to remember in order to continue to advance with the story. There's always an easy mode, and particularly for people who experience a lot of frustration and lack of access in their lives, that is revolutionary. And, for me as a neurodivergent person, there are ways that, like, my neurodivergence prohibits me from certain types of gameplay. My learning disability, my dyscalculia, makes it very hard for me to remember symbolic button combinations. And so there are certain, like, fighting games that I have to play very slowly and practice a lot at before I can advance, and that can be really fucking frustrating, and it takes all the fun out of playing the game for me. For me as a disabled person, cozy games are fucking great. Because 90% of the time, not always, but like 90% of the time, I am able to advance in the story and play the game that I want to play. And my lack of ability has nothing to, it doesn't prohibit me from my enjoyment of the game. And the hardcore gamers are like, cozy games are for girls. They're so fucking easy. Like, why would you care? But it's an access issue, and that makes it a political issue. And, for women who are up at 3 o'clock in the morning nursing their human baby and they want a break, those women play cozy games. And, like, I think that's fucking radical as hell, dude. Like, I just democratizing access to leisure
Yeah.
is super
Oh my
cool.
God, yeah.
It's super cool. And I know this is going to be about psychology, and I've veered back into politics, but
No,
like but also like
it's
psychologically, like
it's all
your life is
connected.
better. Your
It's
life is
all
better when you have access to play, and that's so cool. That's so cool. So that's thing two. And thing three, which we already kind of touched on, is that like cozy games facilitate meaningful connection between real people in the world that isn't based off competition. It's based off helping each other.
yeah,
And like that's
community.
gotta be good for your brain.
Yeah.
That has to be. I'm not a psychologist, but I know that shit is good for you.
Yeah. And also in Animal Crossing, hating on landlords.
Yeah.
Also good.
Yeah, we love that. But yeah, cozy games also sometimes have like a lot of latent critique baked into them,
Yeah.
which is kind of interesting. I have a whole bunch of feelings about that with like Stardew Valley.
Amazing.
And it's moments where it critiques and moments where it doesn't. I think it's a very interesting game that way. But like cozy games have that potentiality, which I think is so sick.
Now my next question, which we always have to ask, is it just capitalism? Is it just appealing to a different demographic? I mean, we may never know who is like what was being said in that boardroom when Harvest Moon was being created. We may never know. But cozy games are highly marketable. You know, there's lots of merch, there's mass appeal, accessibility, like you talked about. Is it just capitalism?
This is a great question, and I'm Googling something real quick
Yep.
because I'm curious. Vast majority of cozy game developers are indie developers. They are people who want to build these types of games. And like it's interesting because like when you think about a game like Stardew Valley, which is such a mega popular game, that game has one developer, one creator who basically like sat in his house for 2 years to develop this game, and now it's like a multi-million dollar mega blockbuster.
Right.
The only major game studio that has a history of producing cozy games is Nintendo. And this is due in part to Nintendo's sort of values of thinking about gaming and like game audiences in terms of blue ocean theory, which is this idea that like you've got your sort of set audience, your people that you know play games, but and you can market and sell games to them all day, but also there's a whole big blue ocean out there of people who have never played games before but who might be interested in playing. And Nintendo from its inception has always been interested in reaching those people, and like that really distinguishes them as a sort of game developer but also like console developer, because when you think about the Nintendo consoles, they're highly portable, they're designed to be used on the move, and consoles like the Wii and like the Switch are designed to be used in multiplayer environments, and so people buy them for their families. Nintendo has always marketed to moms and always marketed to families, and they sort of like have this product that is designed to be accessible by a whole bunch of different people. And that's like not the attitude of the game industry writ large, who sort of have this belief, the AAA game industry, that like the core audience is the gamer boy. And it's been the same core audience since the 80s. And those are the guys who buy really expensive consoles, and they're going to keep buying games, and we're going to market to them. And like whoever else sort of, you know, filters in through the cracks, great, fine, you can be here too. But we're not going to go out of our way to reach audiences that are not immediately like within our circle of people that we market to. So the game, I feel like the gaming industry has so much work that it could be doing to develop these games, which are wildly popular,
Right.
and have so much like cultural production and merch associated with them. Um, and so, and I've never been part of the game industry. And, you know, from what I know about reading about the game industry and talking to people I know who used to work in the game industry, I feel like the answer to the question again is sexism.
Right. It's
Uh,
horribly sexist.
it's is that it's just horribly sexist, and like tech is still a boys club and video games are still sort of tech adjacent, and so it doesn't matter how many Eric Barones in the world develop a game like Stardew Valley. I think it'll take fucking forever for the AAA game industry to realize that cozy games are profitable.
It's so
which is nuts.
It's so interesting too because you have like a company like Xbox, which is quite literally failing. Like PlayStation has outperformed Xbox for years at this point. And essentially the only thing that was really going for Xbox was like the Halo games, and like those aren't even
Nope.
really all that good anymore. Like I'm shocked that that transition hasn't happened yet. And I don't know if it's like a pride thing. I don't know if it's like talent thing, like they just don't have the right people writing those games and they don't want to hire new people to write those games, or if again, a sexism thing. Like but I don't understand why you're leaving that much money on the table. Like
Yeah.
I don't I don't know. I don't get it.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because like so this is the thing about capitalism is that like in order to emerge in the market as like a category with any real clout, like you have to show that you have significant buying power.
Mm,
And part of what I think is kind of interesting about the rise of cozy games as a genre is that like cozy gamers are distinguishing themselves as an audience with significant buying power. Um, and this is fascinating because like in the history of video games, women aren't viewed as an audience for games. They're viewed as a genre.
mm-hmm.
Games are either girl games for women or they're not girl games for women.
Yeah.
And because cozy gaming, it sort of has that latent gendered, because coziness is sort of feminine coded, but also
Right,
there are a
right.
lot of men who play cozy games. It's
My
just a
dad
more
and
expansive category.
yeah,
Your dad,
my
yeah, exactly.
my dad and my partner who both play like they play like Call of Duty and like Star Wars and like Eve and like all of these like online games. They also fuck with Animal Crossing and Stardew Valley so hard. Like they
Yeah,
love these games, and again it's just a different experience. Like
yeah,
if you like horror movies, you're probably not going to watch horror movies every time. You're going to eventually want to watch something a little less, like, a little lower stakes. It is just a different experience, and it's a different mindset that you can put yourself in while still enjoying the practice of gaming. So,
so true.
yeah.
I also think about like video games are brand new on the stage of
Yeah.
media. They're like so baby.
Uh-huh.
Because and partially like we're able to have all these different kinds of games now because the technology is able to facilitate all these different kinds of games. And so there's so much room for growth and development, and like I can't wait to see where it goes. It's already going really interesting places.
Does Pokemon count as like a cozy game now? Because I feel like the initial rendition, I mean, we talked about situational cozy. I feel like that's probably the most appropriate definition, right? But
Yeah.
like there's battling, there's competition. You're trying to, beat the Elite Four and become the greatest Pokemon trainer in the world, right? Which is, more the stereotypical format of gaming. But there's also like there's a lot of like methodical tasks and really cute stuff, and like even the process of like leveling up, like grinding out like levels of like just going on like Route 3 and just like going through the fucking grasses like 20 times. Like it's kind of the same methodical process of like picking up a bunch of sticks in Animal Crossing, and like, obviously there's the battling aspect. But they have things like making poffins. In the new ones, you make food for
Hmm.
your Pokemon, you make curry, and you level up your Pokemon friendships. And there's like fashion contests in I think it's Pokemon Diamond and Pearl. Like there's so
Uh-huh.
many like aspects of the game that like you don't necessarily need to do to complete the game, but there are significant portions that enhance the player experience that are cozy.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like it really depends on how you play. Because the thing about
Yeah.
Pokemon and the Pokemon franchise is that there are so many different kinds of Pokemon games that
Yeah,
offer
now,
different
yeah.
kinds of gameplay and mechanics and affordances that, like, now you get your choice
Mhm.
of different kinds. And so, like, there are some Pokemon games that are definitely cozier than others, but also, like, I feel like it really depends on like the player orientation to the game. I feel like you could totally play a Pokemon game as a cozy game, especially now that they've started borrowing from other
Yes.
popular cozy because they realize people like those things. They like
Mhm.
making animal friends and they like cooking food and they like doing fashion. And so they sort of have included these things because they know people like them. And this is part of why I feel like the definition of cozy is evolving so hard that we need better and different and more categorizations.
Right.
Because I don't know if I would call Pokemon coherently cozy,
Yeah,
but also I feel like it really depends on how you feel about the game, you know?
100%. I want some advice from you, the expert, of
Oh.
how to get the most cozy out of a game. What is like your that may not be cozy? Like how to best amplify the coziness of a game.
That's so fun. I love that. I think it really depends. So, like, open world games are really easy to amplify the cozy because you have like any number of things you could do, and that's part of why I like them. I really like the Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, Zelda games because I can log in and do any number of things depending on my mood. And if I'm in a cozy mood, I'm gonna go and like forage for wild mushrooms, and I'm gonna ride my horsey, and I'm gonna do puzzles. And if I'm in like a really shit violent mood and I just want to kill things, like I'll go hunt down some bogoblins or whatever. And I like that it's got that like duality that I can do both of those things. Um, but like live your best life, choose your own adventure. Coziness is what you make it. My girlfriend plays Red Dead Redemption as a horse girl game, so
Anything is
there's
possible.
this anything is possible. Anything is possible. Live your best life.
Amazing. And then I want your cozy game recommendations because like I've played the big ones. I've played like Harvest Moon. I've played Animal Crossing. I've briefly played Stardew Valley on like my friend's console. Um, I've I've watched Shem play Stray. I thought that was also a really cute game. I've played,
Yeah.
like Unpacking, like various cozy games. But again, those are the ones that I feel like are the most popular. I want to know your personal cozy game recommendations if they're popular ones, that's fine. But then like any like smaller, maybe undiscovered ones or
Mm-hmm.
ones that maybe are a little
Oh,
underrated.
this is so fun. I love this question. So most of these games, if you're a cozy gamer and you're in cozy gaming online communities, probably you will have heard of all of these. But for those of you who are not, here are some new recommendations. Number one recommendation is Spiritfarer. And I will say like Spiritfarer is a game that you play when you want to play a cozy game that will also like break your heart a little bit. This game will make you feel things. So if you don't want to feel things, don't play Spiritfarer. But I love this game. I think it's so beautiful and so stunning. That's a really really good one. I disclaimer, personally I have not finished it because I'm not ready for the ending.
Oh,
It's been sitting there and I haven't I think I have to finish it. I think I'll finish it this month before classes start up again.
do it.
Oh, really good game. Break my heart. So good. I do really love Unpacking for a whole bunch of reasons.
Yeah.
Unpacking, it's interesting how popular it got because it's also like a true indie game.
Yeah.
And I love that about it.
It's so
Unpacking is a
low
great
key.
game. So low key. There's a game that I really enjoy that's quite different. If you like puzzle games and you want to get away from the farming thing, there's a really great game called Chants of Sonar that is about rediscovering a lost language. And it's very puzzly and it's so good. It's short. I finished it. I finished it quickly. But that's a great one if you like puzzles and you like language and you like words. That's a cool one. There's also a game called Cosmic Wheel Sisterhood, which you actually, Skullie, would love. It's a witchy game where you
Oh,
build your own
hell
tarot
yeah.
cards. It is super fun. Really good game. Kind of dissonantly cozy. There are some definitely like not cozy themes, but also like
That's
the
fine.
graphics are really beautiful and the building of tarot cards is so cool.
Oh, I
I really like that
love.
one. Really, really enjoyed. And there's a game that my girlfriend recommended to me that I haven't played yet, but that everyone is talking about in the cozy gaming circles, which is I think it's My Life as a Teenage Exocolonist. Um,
I'm
I'll get all
screaming.
these names correct and I'll send them, we'll put them in the comments. But that one, it's sort of like part visual novel and part other stuff.
Oh, it's a
That's a
narrative
really good
RPG.
game.
I
Yeah. hmm
love
It's
that. That's
supposed
great.
to be really good. Everyone's raving about it. And then of course, I also haven't played this game, but everyone's been talking about Infinity Nikki. If
Okay.
you like dress up and you like open world stuff, Infinity Nikki is supposedly really great, and I
Okay.
definitely do have to play it now because like so many people have recommended it to me.
Amazing.
And
I've
that one's brand new as well.
fabulous. I've written all these down. I'm gonna buy all of them today. No.
Yay! You know what
um,
else I started playing that's like I don't know how I feel about it still because some of the controls are kind of annoying, but I've been playing this game called House Flipper that was recommended to me on a cozy gaming I think it was subreddit.
Oh, I
And
think I have heard of that one. There's like,
it really is just very mindless.
yeah,
You do like you break down walls and you paint walls and you clean windows and you
yeah,
know plant bushes and stuff. It's been very mellow and good for me because my mind has been way overworked.
I love that.
Ironic that when my mind is overworked, I want to go play something where if it was real labor, my body would be exhausted. But it's not real labor. It takes place. I think about this all the time. It's
Love,
fascinating. There's
love.
so many cozy games that are like deeply about labor in a way that is like kind of questionable, but
Right,
also labor is easy to gamify. So like why wouldn't we do it, you know?
right. And it's also like, I don't know, the romanticization of like going to forage is I think more appealing than like, at laboring in a field somewhere where you're picking wheat all day or whatever. Like,
Well, and like what it is too is like the fantasy of being like owning the means of production.
right, being your being your
Where
own
you are
boss.
sort of you're your own boss and you have a steady income and you don't have to worry about whether or not you're going to have health insurance. And
Yes.
you know, we could joke all we want about like Tom Nook being a horrible capitalist overlord, but at the same time, like you get unlimited time to pay back that home loan.
Mm-hmm. That's
And
true.
that kind of thing, that kind of like safety and security and like all your needs will be met doesn't happen in the real world. So
Mm-hmm.
that's part of why I think like the fantasy of fruitful labor is so common in cozy games because like we don't have that in real life. And so
Right.
like you could talk all day till you're blue in the face about how Stardew Valley is so neoliberal, blah blah blah. But also like the world is neoliberal and part of the gameplay of Stardew Valley is like negotiating using the game to negotiate how you feel about labor and about you know the neoliberal society in which you live. While we're still on this topic, very last minute, I would like to do a quick plug. If you are listening to this and you are a cozy gamer, especially if you interact in online cozy communities, whether on TikTok or Facebook or Reddit or Instagram, like wherever, I would really like to talk to you for my thesis. I am still recruiting people. There will be a link in the description for the episode that you can click on. And yeah, it's an hour ish of your time that you will be volunteering, and I will be forever grateful. And like the real benefit of participating in research like this is that like you get to share your perspective and shape the conversation about important things that happen in culture. We think that we all know the things that are happening in culture because we do, like we're in it. We you know breathe the air that it is. But nothing gets remembered unless people codify it and write it down. And part of the reason that I'm recording all these things is like for posterity, so that people know that we were here and that we were doing something important, and that you know as the field of game studies and the more tangentially the fields of cultural studies and feminist media studies evolve, that people know that what we were doing here in the year of our Lord 2025 was significant, that it mattered. And so if that means something to you, click the link. I would love to talk to you.
We are now descending into our unserious corner. This is the unresearched corner, purely based on vibes. And I have a question for you. What crimes do you think Tom Nook has committed? Because I've got a list.
Oh, so many. Well, you read me your list first, and then I'll see if I can fill in any gaps.
First of all, tax fraud, tax evasion. Every capitalist, every rich landlord, tax fraud, tax evasion. OSHA violations, endangering
Mm-hmm.
workers. I don't really have
Mm-hmm.
evidence of this, but I just have a vibe that he's done that
Mm-hmm.
before. Child labor. Timmy
Oh
and
yeah.
Tommy, they're not getting paid in bells. They're getting paid in a
No.
nice firm clap on the shoulder.
Yep. The other one I think Tom Nook is guilty of too is like antitrust violations because like he owns all the real estate and he owns the general store and he owns the bank and like
Yep.
the only business that he doesn't own is like the Able sisters
My
and
girls!
Red. Yeah, yeah. So like, you know, watch your back, Able sisters. Tom Nook is probably gonna try and do a merger and acquire your business
The
because he
Tom
loves owning
the Tom Nook Dominion. Him like leering
everything.
over everything. You're
Oh my
so right.
god. I brought up in my game studies class last semester that Tom Nook was an evil capitalist and people like thought that was so funny and surprising and I'm like you guys clearly don't exist on the same internet I exist on.
Oh my God, no, it is so funny.
But like this is what I say. This is what I mean when I say that the field of game studies needs us, you guys, because
Right.
I said this to a class full of people who were interested in game studies and they all thought that was like a novel idea. What's your favorite cozy pastime that is not a game?
Yeah, I am gonna need a second to think about this, but I love this question, but I want to hear you say yours first.
I feel like for me, so I I was like, "Ooh, sewing, cosplay," and then I was like, "Nah, that's not really cozy. It's like stressful." My favorite cozy pastime is cross stitch, because that shit is so like meditative and feels easy, and I love it.
I think my favorite cozy pastime is probably baking. Like,
Yeah.
cooking stresses me out because the directions I don't feel are specific enough. But with
Mm,
baking, it gives me exact measurements, exact times, and you get a nice little sweet treat at the end. I fucking love
I love
baking.
that.
Love baking.
Oh,
Yeah, I love crafting. I love like
so good.
I love hand sewing things. Like
Yep,
when I'm
I do
using
too.
the minute a sewing machine is involved, my stress, my cortisol is heightened. Like the
Yeah.
minute I have to thread that fucking bobbin again, I'm already at my wit's end. All right,
Yeah.
I can't say it. But if I'm just hand stitching stuff, something, I'm like, I got all the time in the world.
Yeah,
I'm
I know.
sewing a hole in a pair of pants. I'm like, you know what?
Mm.
Everything's gonna be okay. Like,
So jolly. No, I've discovered this is part of the reason why I really have loved taking up quilting is that I've discovered that I use the machine so that when the quilt top is done, I can sew it together like with the batting and the backing by
yeah.
hand. And
Oh,
the hand quilting is so joyful and so cozy for me. So I'm like, I will suffer with the machine
yeah.
to get the quilt top done, and then I will hand sew it to my heart's content. Oh, so fun, so cozy.
Why? A point, totally unrelated point to anything else in this episode. Why haven't they made that easier? Threading a fucking bobbin or making it like setting up a sewing machine easier.
I don't know.
I
I
feel
don't
like,
know. I honestly don't. I feel like it's just complicated. But
yeah.
also like the thing about things that make sewing machines easier is that they sometimes make them like less durable.
Mm.
There's a lot of discourse about this in the quilting Facebook group that I follow. Is that contemporary sewing machines that they make easier to use are also a lot of times made out of plastic, which
Mm.
degrades, whereas like old machines with metal parts will run fucking forever,
Yeah.
even though they're annoying to thread the bobbin. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
you take the good with the bad, I guess.
I guess so. Yeah. I know my grandma's old sewing machine is ancient and it works like a
Still
charm.
works.
Mm-hmm.
What is the best cozy sound
Yes.
to
Ooh.
you? There's so many good ones.
I mean, for me, this is gonna be controversial, I feel like.
Good.
I fucking love a fiddle. I love a violin. I love a string instrument.
Yeah.
I mean, I love like, like rainfall and like things like that. Like that's, but I feel like, old news. But for me, there's
Mm.
something so cozy and comforting. And like, in Lord of the Rings, like concerning hobbits, it's a very violin heavy piece. The violin is
Oh,
the leader of that melody. And it is just a lot of like Celtic in particular, um, uh, fiddles and violins pieces are just, oh God, they just relax me to an unreasonable degree, frankly.
yeah. Valid. I was gonna say rainfall because I sleep with a rain machine, but
Yeah.
I also really love like those wood wick candles
Oh,
that
the
make
little
the
crackle.
crackly sound.
Yes.
Ooh,
A
love that guy. Love that
fireplace.
guy.
Love a
So
fireplace
cozy.
too. Yeah.
So cozy. I love those sounds in games too. I love a crackling sound in a
Yeah.
tavern in a game. Mm,
Uh,
juicy.
I'm gonna put on like a fantasy soundtrack and pull up Spiritfarer, I think. Cause like this, oh,
Hell yeah, dude.
what am I gonna
The
start?
art is gorgeous.
I you know what? I'm gonna do Spiritfarer because Cosmic Wheel Sisterhood also sounds amazing, but I really just want to talk to you about Spiritfarer, so I think I'm just gonna
Yeah, yeah,
start
yeah.
that.
You'll love Spiritfarer.
Yeah,
Yes, do it. I'm so excited. Yay. Oh, I can't wait.
amazing.
Happy Stim. Yay. All
We
right,
love.
should we move on to our supporting character love fest?
Yes, let's do it.
We're picking supporting characters to love on related to our theme. We've chosen characters from cozy games. Skullie, who did you pick?
I picked the Able sisters. They're fighting back
Oh,
against
hell
Tom
yeah.
Nook, Tooth, and fucking Nail. We love girlies that own their own business. We love it. Mabel and Sable, and now Label, I believe, later added in the new Amazon. Jesus Christ. Animal Crossing Horizons. Animal Crossing Horizons,
I mean,
not Amazon.
Tom Nook gives Amazon vibes though, so I
He
understand
does.
why that little brain slip happened. Yeah.
Sorry, Jeff Bezos
Oof.
tried to take control of my brain through my COVID vaccine again.
Oh.
Don't mind me.
I love Sable because she's so shy and doesn't want to talk to you
She's
at first.
so
And then you get to know her and
shy.
she always has stuff to say. I
Yes.
love her. I go
Yep.
talk to her every time.
I do too. I'm the same way. And she's the talent. Like Mabel's the
Yeah.
face, Mabel's the marketing. She talks to the customers. She's very personal, but like
Yep.
Sable's the talent. She's the girl.
Oh my God.
She's it.
I feel like I'm always the Sable and I need the Mabel. I think you're my Mabel,
I'll be your
Skullie.
Mabel. I'll be your Mabel. I'm happy to. Yeah. I love them. I love them. I adore them. I think they're so cute. Like they're just like really cute too. Like I'm just like oh, they're adorable. I've spent many an hour in that shop perusing or building things myself, like when you make the designs yourself and then yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's so
Oh.
fun. But I have a question. Are they hedgehogs or porcupines? I was thinking about this today. Maybe a quick Google
I
search.
think yeah, Google. I was gonna say porcupines, but maybe that's wrong. I feel like because they're so spiky, you know.
Right.
But maybe they are hedgehogs.
Let's find out.
Let me know what. Let me know what Lord Google says. What does Lord Google say?
They are hedgehogs.
Hedgehogs. That means hedgehogs are cuter.
They are
That
so
makes
cute.
sense.
I will say,
They are so cute.
I also thought they were porcupines, but the internet is
Yeah.
telling me hedgehogs. I love them. I love Sable's like sleepy little eyes. Like she's just like so content, just like so. I love
I
her.
love her.
Oh, anyway.
Oh, so great.
Yep. What was your
So
supporting character?
for my supporting character, I'm also going to talk about an anthropomorphic animal. This character is a character from Spiritfarer, and there are a lot of great characters. This is part of one of the strengths of Spiritfarer is that there are so many great characters. But the one that really sticks with me that I want to talk about is Atul, who is a giant frog, and he is the uncle of the player character. And he's my personal favorite of all of the characters from Spiritfarer, partially because like he's so like hail fellow well met. He loves all the gifts you give him. He loves food, and then he's also like really present during the one of the most sort of alarming game mechanics, which is like the thunderstorms. He sort of like stands on the roof and plays music during thunderstorms, and you have to do this like pretty quick jumping thing. And he just makes it so enjoyable, and I love him standing there playing his music in the rain.
Oh my God.
He's just such a great. He reminds me of like men in my life, like sort of big, soft, loving men, like my dad and my uncles. I just think he's fabulous. Also, he gives great hugs. The animation of him giving your player character a hug is like balm for my soul. It is one of my favorite things in the whole wide world.
That is
I
so
love
cute.
Atul. I love Spiritfarer. I love Atul. He's so great.
That's so fantastic. Oh my God. I can't wait to play this game. I'm genuinely so excited.
Dude, I'm so excited for you.
All right. Well, I think that's all we have for today.
I think that's it. Yay.
Yeah. What a lovely conclusion to our cozy episode.
Thank you all for listening to today's Yapfest. Please yap about it to your friends. If you want to yap to me, go find that link in the description. And until next yap, we'll see you later.